Do you want to know the 3 biggest mistakes people make when trying to prevent foot blisters? Excellent, you're in the right place, and here's what I can tell you. Hi, my name's Rebecca Rushton, and I can tell you, you are not alone. Foot blisters are the most common injury in sport, and that's a fact. And there's a very simple reason why this is so. It's because what you think causes blisters is wrong. And that's why you don't know how to tell good advice from bad, so you keep choosing the wrong strategies for your blisters, and you're wasting money on products that were never going to work because you don't know what will work for your blisters, your feet and your sport. And so you keep buying new shoes only to keep getting blisters. And that's why your blisters continue to be painful in spite of your best efforts to stop them. And so your training keeps getting interrupted, and you keep hobbling around with your feet squelching in your shoes, and you're compensating for sore feet, causing other aches and pains and injuries. And that's why what works one day doesn't work the next, and why you're never quite sure if you're going to make your blisters better or worse, because let's face it, why the heck did you get this blister in the first place? And that's why you keep second guessing yourself, worrying what to do, when to do it, and what to do it with. And why people like you end up not bothering with prevention at all. We've got the wrong end of the stick when it comes to that question, what actually causes blisters? It's quite unbelievable, but it's at the root of why people continue to be mystified about their blisters. So if there's one thing I want you to remember, it's the answer to what actually causes blisters. Here's a little video I made a while ago to show you. Tell me, what do you think causes blisters? Chances are you'd say something along the lines of heat, moisture and friction, or poorly fitting shoes, or something along those lines. Well, firstly, there's more to it than bad shoes. You can have perfect shoes and still get blisters, just like I did. And secondly, blisters aren't caused by heat. They're not a burn, or moisture. You don't have to get blisters just because your feet sweat a lot. Are they caused by friction? Well, kind of. The problem is when you say friction, you actually mean rubbing, and blisters are not caused by rubbing. Let me explain. Do this with me. Place the tip of your right index finger on the back of your left hand. Wobble it back and forth, but keep it stuck to that same bit of skin. Notice how your skin stretches? This is what causes blisters, the skin stretching too much. This stretching is called skin shear. Now keep wobbling while you think about this. Shear might look like rubbing, but it's not. Notice how your fingertip has not actually moved relative to the skin on the back of your hand, because your finger's stuck to that same bit of skin, right? But your skin has moved relative to the underlying bone, and everything in between is stretching. This is shear, a parallel sliding of tissue layers across one another. Shear happens internally, whereas if we were rubbing the back of your hand, rubbing happens to the surface of the skin. Yes, it involves shear too, but it's the internal stretching part that causes blisters, not the external rubbing part. When skin shear is excessive and repetitive, a tiny tear occurs just under the skin surface that, within 2 hours, fills with fluid to look like what we know and love as a blister. Does that make sense? Now think about it. Is it any wonder that if we've got the wrong end of the stick when it comes to what causes blisters, that we find it difficult to stop blisters, or to make them feel better when we treat them? No, it's not surprising at all. I mean, we're focusing on the wrong thing. You know, it's when you match the science of what causes blisters to the science of how blister prevention strategies work that everything just falls into place. And that has a massive negative effect all the way down the line to how you're choosing your blister prevention strategies. This is mistake number 2. We end up choosing the wrong strategy, one that was never going to work, or at least not as well as you think it will. Take taping, for example, everyone's go-to strategy. You know, taping used to be my go-to strategy too, for my athletes' blisters and my own, even though I would still get blisters underneath my tape. There's no doubt blister taping works some of the time, but it doesn't work all of the time, and that used to really bug me because how can you get blisters under tape? I mean, there's nothing rubbing the skin. Well, we know the answer to that now. It's because blisters aren't caused by rubbing. Try it for yourself. Put a piece of your blister tape on the back of your hand, whether it's moleskin, paper tape, leukoplast, fix-em-all, it doesn't matter, and repeat the finger on the back of the hand trick and see how your skin still stretches. But if you're getting blisters in spite of your taping efforts, you're not alone, and perhaps you've just found out why. It's not that taping is useless. You just need to set your expectations a little lower now that you know that blisters are not caused by rubbing, and the aim of tape is not to stop rubbing. And choose an additional blister strategy to augment your blister taping, or a different one that works better altogether. What's at stake here? Well, if you don't realise this, you'll keep wasting money on your tape of choice, and it was never going to do a good enough job at reducing skin shear, and you'll continue to be confused about your blisters. You'll resign yourself to an active lifestyle where you're constantly blighted by blisters, never sure when they'll strike and how bad they'll get, and whether they'll impact your training, your performance, or your adventure. And you'll continue to rely on that false bravado as a defense mechanism to dealing with the frustration. Here's an example of mistake number 3. Some people's big toe is bent upwards, like this one at the middle toe joint, which makes the nail angle upwards. Now, I'm not sure if you realise, but your nail is adhered to the skin directly beneath it, the nail bed. So when you push on the end of your nail, the nail moves back ever so slightly, and so does the skin of the nail bed. This is the cause of the blister. It's coming from the end of the nail being pushed back by the shoe upper because of its angle. It leads to the skin of the nail bed having to stretch too much. But look what happens when we put this simple piece of padding under the big toe. The toenail no longer angles upwards. This is all about biomechanics and foot function. And this is just one blister. There are 6 other toe blisters, 4 ball of the foot blisters, arch blisters, and 3 types of heel blisters. And each of them needs a slightly different slant on prevention. This is mistake number 3. Different blister locations need different strategies, and yet most people do the same thing for every blister. This is absolutely critical to the way I help people with foot blisters. That is, although every blister is caused by shear, there are different reasons for that skin shear at different locations on your foot. It's not a matter of throwing the same strategy at every blister, like I used to go straight for taping for every blister location, no matter what. Taping is not going to help this toenail blister. Will moisture wicking socks help? Probably not, because moisture-related friction levels aren't really implicated here. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, it's when you match the science of what causes blisters to the science of how blister prevention strategies work that everything just falls into place. And this is what I specialise in, understanding the cause of blisters at different locations of your feet and how to match the exact strategy or combination of strategies to that blister. And I specialise in teaching you how to do this for yourself, so focused and repeatable blister prevention is in your hands. I can show you the best strategies for all of these blisters. Now tell me, how often have you seen or heard blisters discussed in this way? In terms of skin shear, not heat, moisture and friction, or rubbing. In terms of how prevention strategies work, and I mean really how they work. And in terms of how what works for one blister location might not be best for another blister location. My guess is never, and that's why you're struggling to get on top of your blisters, not sure why what you're doing isn't working, or lost and not even knowing where to start. But this is the key to your success. Building a blister plan based on what really causes blisters works with any type of activity. I can answer any blister question you have, and even the ones you haven't thought of yet. Questions like, how do I keep my feet dry? What brand of shoes should I buy? What socks should I get? Should I wear 1 pair or 2? Should I pop my blister? How? What gear do I need? What should I do with this heel blister or this toe blister or this arch blister? How do I put these patches on? What's a hydrocolloid dressing? How do I keep my calluses down? Is it a good idea to keep my calluses down? How do I put a band-aid on the tip of my toe without it being a big mess and falling off? What tape should I use? How do I make this stay on all day? I've got a blood blister. What should I do? What's this ridge of hard skin? Why is my skin gone all white and wrinkly? Why am I getting this burning sensation but no blister? I've never had a blister here before. Why now? What antibiotic should I use? How long will my blister take to heal? These are really important questions, So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. I want to share with you why I even know all this stuff and why you should listen to me. Because let's be real, there's a lot of myth and misinformation out there about foot blisters, all based around the wrong cause. Look, I know blisters can be tricky to deal with. In fact, it's a situation I found myself in for a long time. Whether it was just simply walking in the mornings or playing hockey on the weekend, once upon a time my feet seemed to be in a perpetual state of blister recovery. And considering I'm a podiatrist, that's pretty embarrassing to admit. As a result, I've done a lot of research and got to the bottom of things, and now I help people all around the world understand where they're going wrong and putting them on the right path. I can do whatever I want now and be 100% confident I won't get blisters, and it's a wonderful feeling to know those days are behind me. I'm really fortunate in that I can help people overcome all sorts of foot blisters, from minor annoyance to major performance limiting blisters. It's the combination of my 25 years experience as a podiatrist, my own blister proneness, the events I volunteer at, and the research I've done in the last 10 years that allows me to help people in this way, and I love doing it. Here's an example. Matt had decided to pull out of a 48-hour ultramarathon race with nasty blisters under the ball of his foot. He had a go at treating themselves, but they were just too painful. Thankfully, I was providing foot care at this ultramarathon, and after 10 minutes we had him back up and running and finishing his race pain-free. All we needed was to apply the right treatment to allow him to run for another 3.5 hours and put on another 34 kilometers. I help people prepare for big adventures like walking the Camino de Santiago, hiking the PCT or Kokoda, climbing Everest, representing their country in tennis or netball or football, and running desert ultramarathons. I help people preparing for big team events and charity events, the numerous fun runs around the world, and people who just like to get outside and enjoy the great outdoors on their weekends. And I help organisations provide meaningful blister education and resources for their events and their participants, from 6-day ultramarathons like Australia's Big Red Run in the Simpson Desert to endurance trekking events like Oxfam Trail Walker, right down to grassroots tournaments and local sporting clubs. Now, think about Matt and how, instead of chalking up a DNF, he ran for another 34 Ks on his nasty blisters, pain-free no less, because we gave him the right blister treatment. When you know this kind of stuff, you get to a place of confidence and certainty with your feet that you've never had before. Look at Ben. It looks like he's finally reached a place where he can enjoy being blister-free, and he's reaping the rewards that come with it, knocking 15 minutes off his marathon PB as a direct result of successful blister prevention. And people like Michelle. Michelle was training for her first trail running event, and in her training suffered constantly with toe blisters and just couldn't figure out how to get on top of them. After chatting with me over email, Michelle got through her event without any pain or blisters at all. And it's not just runners this works for. I had one mum tell me she applied the right treatment to her daughter's blisters based on all the things we talked about, and she played every game of a 2-day netball carnival, had no blister pain, and the blister was in better shape after the carnival than it was before. Diana is a hiker and distance walker who, a few days after learning this, was able to keep going without blister pain and back it up without the usual blister recovery downtime many of us know only too well. Hugh was constantly getting blisters in his leather hiking boots in wet conditions, but once he figured his blister out, he was blister free for extended periods in the same boots and in the same wet conditions. And look at Marcus. Put yourself in his shoes and think about the impact of not having blisters has made to him. This is a great outcome, I'm sure you'd agree. He's hiking with the family and being able to enjoy it for what it should be, rather than tolerate it for what it's become with blisters. Now, this is your reality if you want it.